look, everyone is underestimated until they're not. As Black folks, young people, as women, whatever your makeup, there's always going to be people who doubt or misread you. And you just have to be able to look in the mirror and be brutally honest about your assessment and what your intentions and desires are in life, then set out to take care of those desires and intentions. These were initial lessons to me that have held me in good stead ever since.
A film and television industry veteran, Ralph Farquhar began his career writing for the classic ABC series Happy Days. He quickly advanced into the producing ranks as supervising producer of Fox's iconic show, Married with Children. We all remember that. And from there, he moved on to executive produce and co-create the provocative, award-winning Fox series South Central and UPN's award-winning hit comedies, Moesha and The Parkers. There's so much more to this resume of success that actually are not just shows. These are not just shows you did, Ralph. These are cultural kind of milestones, at least in my life. And it's amazing to be an outsider, a civilian, and wonder how you did this all. Like from Happy Days to Moesha, that feels like it's on two different planets of opportunity of how that all happened. So I am just always interested in creative people who have had a career in creative work. Because in my high school days, I didn't have a counselor who could say, this is possible. These are the things you could do with your imagination. These are places you could go. So my first point of curiosity when I talk to someone as established as you, and thank you for joining us, by the way. We really appreciate your time. So where does it all start for you in terms of believing in yourself that you could do creative work rather than taking some traditional path of becoming an accountant or, cement layer or whatever? Is that in your family? Is that from your parents and, from your household or high school? Where do you start that?
Well, I mean, as it turns out, I have a brother, just about everybody in my family the kids were very creative. And even though it wasn't like the thing that was emphasized, I'm from Chicago, working middle class family, mom and dad graduated college back when that was a rarity. And so, they want us to be doctors, lawyers, the usual. and of course, 4 of the 5 of us went astray and wound up, in the creative endeavors that we're involved with today. So, obviously we get it from our parents, but that I think the core to it was, for me, I knew I didn't want to be in a 9-to-5 gig indoors somewhere, because I was that kid, and when you're in school and grade school, you just like staring out the window. You were just outside. Now you're wondering what's out there. And, and I just knew I didn't want that. Have to be inside somewhere every day, 9 to 5. So that was my main inspiration in terms of career. But early on, I think I developed that thing of attitude of doing things that people don't expect you to do. And initially, it took me. I went to West Point. I got an appointment to go to West Point, and that was a thing that I did. And it was just by happenstance. A friend of mine was applying, and I went along with him, and I got the nomination, and he didn't. So he regrets to this day. He took me with him and gave me all the information. I wound up getting into West Point. But the interesting story about that, because this is way back in the day. I'm old as dirt. I was in ROTC in high school. So, I don't know if I was the most disciplined person to be in ROTC, but I was in it, and I was pretty good at it. And I got this appointment, and the white colonel who oversaw the district to my school for ROTC is a military officer. When my sergeant, who was a black sergeant, said, "Yeah, Mr. Farquhar just got an appointment to West Point." Well, this man spent the next half hour to convince me that wasn't even possible, that I was mistaken. There's no way I could have received an appointment. And he was so convincing that I was starting to doubt it. I said, I remember went home to my mom and said, I don't think I'm in. The white man just told me, said, get out of here. And of course I had not, I went there, but that was typical. That was typical of whatever, at that time for a young black man or woman in this country, that it was considered exceptional that you would aspire to do certain things. And, because I grew up in the projects, we, south side of Chicago, this guy couldn't imagine that I had got a congressional appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point. And I had, and I went there, and so that taught me right then and there that I had to hunker down and be determined in regards to anything I might decide to do in life. And so that's held me in good stead. Held me in good stead when I went to West Point. Held me in good stead when I went to U of I after that. Held me in good stead in this career I've had. I've been fortunate enough to have in the entertainment industry. It's just, I just don't accept when people tell me I can't do it.
That lack of belief within your formative school system, school years, actually is something that a lot of people have had their wings clipped by adults that don't believe in where you can go, which is amazing that we still, even today, we clip kids' wings.
And by the way, I don't want to make it racial. The interesting thing about, because when you're talking about counselors, you mentioned, when I graduated from high school, my counselor called me in a month before graduation to counsel me on, should I go to college or should I get a trade or whatever? And a black woman, and she said, you probably should get a trade. And I told her, I said, well, I've been accepted to about 10 colleges. I got an appointment at West Point. I got, about 6 scholarships, full scholarships to other colleges. And she said, well, how did you do that? I said, obviously not with your help. I mean, I could not believe this woman. I mean, thank God I had the parents I had. You know what I mean? I really give them all the credit in the world, because they got on my ass about, look, you better go out there and apply. You got to do this or find a job, one or the other. I guess they were saying the same thing to me, but it was like, you better either figure it out or you out and get a job. So I figured it out. But my counselor didn't even talk to me. How are you going to talk to a kid a month before he graduates about what's going to happen after he graduates? That means it should have happened a year prior to that. But and then she didn't even know who I was. She
was counseling you, and she was counseling you.
Yeah, and she was my and it was a black woman, and and to this day, look, everyone is underestimated until they're not, and so and as black folks, as young people, as women, whatever your makeup, there's always going to be people who doubt or misread you, and you just have to be able to look in the mirror and be brutally honest about your assessment and what your intentions and desires are in life, and then set out to take care of those desires and intentions. And that's so. These were initial lessons to me that have held me in good stead ever since.
I read that you wanted to be an astronaut, which kind of tells me that you were dreaming big from the get-go.
I wanted to be, like you want to be what you see. When I was a kid, they had the astronauts, and they went into space and they captivated me. And I remember all the initial astronauts, they said they were pilots, they had gone to West Point. Now, this is how stupid I was. I thought, oh, so when I got the choice to go to West Point, I showed up there. They said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to fly and be an astronaut. They said, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And we ain't flying nothing over here. I mean, we got helicopters, but you're not gonna be up in space. And I was, I said, and it was because I didn't know that all the initial astronauts were in the Army Air Force, that the Air Force hadn't been created yet. So that's why they were all these West Point grads who had done it. So, but then something else, reality really hit home. They gave me a color test. You know that test where you go and there's a red number in dots against a green background. Test. Well, I couldn't see the number, and it almost kept me out of West Point. But then they took it out of the machine and put it at an angle, and I could see the number. So they said you had a red-green deficiency. So we'll let you in, but you're not going to fly anything because you red-green colorblind, and we're just not. That's a no in that particular thing. So I had to give it up. So that was I could they would let me fly a helicopter, they would let me fly a fixed wing aircraft. I was just they would let me fly the little paper planes we used to have.
That's literally clipping your wings. Let me ask, what kind of cultural like stuff were you intaking at that point? Like what type of artists and popular cultural references, and what were the movies and television shows that kind of shaped your palette for when you started writing?
Oh, when I started writing, gosh, the weird thing about it, I didn't watch a lot of TV.
Really? Yeah.
I mean, at the time, again, when I grew up, we were in the streets playing, then you go to high school, you're doing whatever. That was a full time. I didn't have time to watch TV and do my homework, or and there wasn't a TV in every room. I mean, let's get real on that.
Yeah.
There was one TV, and my father was watching it, and I didn't like anything he watched. But I grew up in the time of the westerns, Bonanza, Paladin, Gunsmoke and all that. And Twilight Zone was obviously something I really loved. And then I became acquainted with Star Trek actually after I left West Point in reruns when I was living in New York City. I'd never really seen it when it first came out. And so I'm a big sci-fi buff. Okay, those are the things I kind of like. But in terms of writing that I really, I went into comedy, and shows that I really admire were things that were like MASH. I always loved the way they could blend the comedy with the drama and the heart, and the truth. They were making a comment about our existence.
That was such good writing. Such good writing.
Big fan of All in the Family and a lot of Norman Lear's early stuff when he started getting his shows on the air. I really admired a lot of those. My initial impetus to even be a writer was two things. One, I had been an actor, and so I figured I'd write myself a role. But that's a very actory type of attitude. Okay, and it was stupid because no one was going to put me in the show. I don't care what I will. But the other thing was, because of my experiences as an actor going out in auditions, I knew the roles that were out there for Black actors, and it was terrible. So I wanted to write something that could rectify that, tell a different story. Instead of, I was going out for parts of a gangbanger number one, slave number three. They didn't even give them names. And I said, well, we got to do better than that. So I said, I'm going to write a story about me going to West Point. So that was the first script I wrote. you know.
And that was not the time for that, right?
No, it
I
was like,
mean, Black achievement.
well, I got an agent, Dolores Robinson, who's wonderful, Holly Robinson's Pete's mom.
Oh wow.
And a good friend of mine, my first, she signed me up. So that's how I got an agent because, but she's a Black woman. She saw, okay, this is, like you say, Black excellence. Let's at least try to sell it. We weren't able to sell it, but it let me know, okay, I might be able to do this. Someone like Dolores would sign me just off this script. It told me, oh, well, maybe my story has some validity, and some commercial potential. So it really encouraged me, and I went on from there.
Just in keeping with timeline, how does Ralph from Chicago go to West Point, then gets a formal education in advertising and does sales, and then gets to Happy Days? Like, I feel like I'm missing a part of the plot here. Like, what happens in between advertising, a career in advertising, and actually writing for Happy Days?
Well, the part you don't know is the acting thing. So,
did you audition to be the Fonz?
Oh my goodness, that's oh well. Let me that's a big story. I know it's a big swing. So look, I leave West Point and I go to U of. I had three choices. I got accepted at Harvard, Northwestern, and U of I. Back in those days, you couldn't get financial aid until you were a semester at the school, right? You couldn't transfer in and get financial aid right away. Harvard was way out of my budget for that year, and they called me up. They said, "We want you over here." I said, "No, how much is it?" And he told me. I said I couldn't do it. Quiet as it's kept, Northwestern was more expensive than Harvard.
Really?
So that was out of it. So U of I was $500. So
wow,
that's where I wound up, and I switched majors there. Went from double E major. I was an aerospace major for a semester at the U of I, and then they ended the Apollo program. And the headlines were they were retraining all these aerospace engineers as teachers. Well, that was the last thing I wanted to be. And I'm majoring in aerospace engineering. I said, oh, well, this is pointless. Wow. And so I come from the school, I'm still middle-class kid from Chicago. I said, well, I got to switch majors, but I want a major that describes a job, so I could get into the School of Communication Advertising at the U of I because you had to be a junior to get into that school at the U of I. And it said advertising. I said, I understand what advertising. I'm from Chicago. Chicago has big ad agencies there. So I signed up for that. I didn't know what it was. And that's where I learned about writing commercials and camera directions and stuff like that. And that was and I really liked that. But I was going to go into sales. To get started in advertising, you had to have sales experience before an ad agency would even consider you, if that makes sense. So you had to. Your master's program was working as a sales rep for whatever company, and I latched onto a company called American Hospital Supply Corporation, and they offered me a job in Irvine, California. And that was a dream come true. So I wound up out here. Okay. I'm in California, walking at Newport Beach, 82 degrees on Christmas Day. All my relatives hate me. And back in Chicago. And I ran into, after my training, I moved up into LA. I actually had an apartment in Beverly Hills. I cleared you gotta understand. You gotta understand this. You gotta get this. So I clear $500 every 2 weeks. I make more money than my mom and dad. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So I can't spend on. I got a car. I got a. That's all I got. I'm a kid. I can't spend all my money. Now that sounds ridiculous, but it's a different time, right? And then I'm watching TV one day, and I see a friend of mine. When I left West Point, I lived in the Lower East Side of New York. I used to hang out in the East Village or in the Village, and became very good friends with a young actor named Carl Franklin. Carl is a big time director now. Directed Devil in the Blue Dress. Does a bunch of, when you watch TV, you see his name every other episode of quality TV. And I see Carl on a show with Stacy Keach called Kareem. And I'm going, oh, snap, Carl. So I could go through the yellow pages, look up his number. You could do this back then. Call him Carl. I said, Carl, man, you made it. Congratulations. He said, yeah, man, I'm doing it. You know, I said, just out of curiosity, how much money do you make? He said, $5,000 a week. I said, now I just told you, I clear $500 every other week and I can't spend it. He's making $5,000 a week.
Wow.
And I sat and watched him on TV for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I said, you know what? I think I could do this. And I figured I at least got to try. I have to try. But now I live in Beverly Hills. So where do I go? Where do I try? I don't know anything. There was an acting school right from I don't know if you know LA, the design centers right at Melrose and Robertson. And I used to walk by. Now understand, I never saw any other black face over in this neighborhood. This is Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, way back in the day. Every time I walk down the street, I'm the only black person. If I go into a restaurant, I'm the only black person, right? Maybe another person occasionally, and they were probably with me. And so I'm walking. I said, I've driven past this place, and the Beverly, the design center was under construction. This is LA people know what I'm talking about. I go down there and I knock on the door, see if I could apply for an acting class, because that's what I do. If I want to learn something, I go to school for it, right? I walk in there in the middle of this lily white neighborhood business district. Is a black acting school. Everybody there is black. It's weird. It's like it's like talk about Twilight Zone. It's a Twilight Zone episode. I'm wondering where these people come from. I've never seen any of them who were working there. But it turns out not only was it a black acting school, but all the top working black actors were taking classes there. And that's where so that's I find myself in acting. And then in my struggle, my journey as an actor, I transitioned slowly, but reluctantly, because quite correctly, I realized I wasn't a very good actor. And more importantly, I realized because of the people, because of the mentorship, and I know you want to talk about mentorship, I was mentored by people like Hal DeWint, who's a producer, director, writer out of New York, who is legendary, who introduced me to just about everything I needed to know about this business as a black person, and is responsible for me really becoming excited and falling in love with the industry for all the right reasons. And I got a chance to, work with actors I had only seen on the screen, and not only work with them, but to become their friends and to learn from their experience. I wound up becoming friends with Lonnie Elder III, who wrote Sounder, talking about a writer mentorship. This, he's brilliant. I could only wish to have written something on the level that he did. So it was there at this school. This school in the middle of the whitest part of town.
That was a black acting school, though. Wow. Wow.
It was Kilpatrick Cambridge, Lincoln Kilpatrick and Ed Cambridge, who was a renowned stage manager in New York, on Broadway. And Lincoln was a renowned actor and back in the day, he was in every other show on TV, every other movie you just saw, Lincoln everywhere. So they really reached back and pulled a lot of us through.
So much about this story feels like exposure is the thing, right? If you had stayed in Chicago and had limited exposure to things, you wouldn't have seen all these people. I mean, listen, what you just told me about Carl Franklin, I did the math on it. That is the equivalent of him making almost $800,000 a year now. So that $5,000 a week. So you bumped into somebody who was almost making $1 million back then. I think I would be excited.
Oh yeah. So I got in this business because I was greedy. But people like how Carl himself, who ultimately he joined when I told him about this class I was at, he said, "What are you talking about?" And he came. He said, "Oh, you're here with the real people," and they changed my. I went from wanting to make $5,000 a week to wanting to make a difference, realizing the power of this industry, how these images shaped our collective self-esteem, if you will. And once I realized that, I said, well, I got to be a writer. I got to be a producer. I got to do something to alter the course of this, because at that moment in time, it was not the trajectory of Black creatives it wasn't a pretty picture.
Let's go to Happy Days. So what did you learn there? First of all, how did you get it? And then what did you learn from that initial experience of writing for a very popular television show? Oh, and I have a different question for you too, because now you can answer a question for me. So they had a family member that just disappeared on Happy Days. What was
I think
this
it was
dude's
Chuck,
name?
the older brother. Yeah,
The older brother.
Yeah, right.
What happened to the older brother? He just.
I don't know. I got there after that happened. In real life, they canceled his contract.
So that's what happened. Contract canceled. All right. Well, so how did that happen for you? And then what did you learn during that initial experience?
Look, the story. There's stories and there's stories. I'll tell you the story. We can talk about that offline. But just in general, it happened because I had a roommate at the time, and she got me a job at this travel agency that she worked at. And I was kind of like I was the assistant, the receptionist, and all the three ladies who owned the travel agency were all wives to major players in the business, either attorneys, directors, producers, like that. And it was right next door to Ma Maison, which was the at its heyday, and this was during the heyday, it was the hangout for Hollywood, to have lunch. Everybody, I mean, top to bottom. And so as a result, this is before computers. They used to all book their flights with us right next door. So that's where I am. So the receptionist is the Black guy, me. So
so who's who at that point.
She gave me the job. She said, "You meet someone there." I said, "Okay, all right. I'm just listening." I interviewed. I got the job, and then, but within this agency, they have travel agents, and and basically, people who book acts and book flights with their friends, and they get the travel agent status, and now they get all the benefits of that, right? And one of these ladies I got really comfortable with, Betty Kempley, real friendly with, I should say. And she says, Ralph, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to be a writer. She said, well, my husband is executive producer of Happy Days. I'll tell him to give you a job.
What?
Yeah. I'm going, yeah, okay. But Betty's like, Betty set up the meeting. I meet with Walter. We kind of, I didn't wear socks back then. I don't wear socks now. And he didn't wear socks. And we were talking, and he said, hey, okay, I'll give you a job. And he says, we got a producing program around here. Pays like about $700 a week. That was a lot of money back then. We got an assistant, but that producing thing was a producing program for minority. They were training minorities. And then they said, we got writer's assistants. Now, on the way walking in, I peeked into the writer's room. I saw there was 10 people there. And I realized very quickly. So I said, and I was always leery of like being any sort of program because I knew how folks thought. Oh, they just let you in, right? But then there was sheer numbers. I said, I could be in a producing, it was a line producer program. And I said, every show has one line producer. So you go through this program, so you have to compete for whatever show to get on. Or if I was a writer's assistant and worked my way up to maybe becoming a writer, there were 10 writers in that room. So they was like, okay, there's 10. 10 of those guys is one of. I said, I gotta go for it. I said, I'll take the writer's assistant job, which was a lot less money. That was the beginning, of me getting in there. So I'm on Happy Days as a writer's assistant. Now, I had never seen Happy Days. Happy Days was already in syndication.
What?
I figured, I said, well, let me, I had never seen, I remember you asked me about what shows. I didn't watch TV. I didn't have time. I was moving. I was having fun. I go home and watch Happy Days because it was on every day because it was already in syndication, even though it was still on first run on the network. And it was the number one show, by the way. And I watched it. I said, oh my gosh, this is the whitest thing I've ever seen in my life.
They didn't have a single black character, if I remember right.
I said, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm talking about from an assistant point of view. I'm going, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm like, what? Because I was hoping I'd be able to move, but how am I going to move? This is really white. And so, when I got in there, and the important thing, and I know the important thing I learned is everything is about relationships and it's about team play. And producing a show requires a lot of people, and there's a lot of things, a lot of ways you can contribute, So, so I got in there, I met some great people. I was able to contribute, but more importantly, I made the connections. People saw things in me that maybe I didn't even see in myself. And one of those people was Gary Marshall, who created it.
The Gary Marshall?
The Gary Marshall. Yeah.
The actual Gary Marshall.
Yeah, no,
wow.
Gary.
Wow.
No, Gary was that was his show. He had 5 shows. He was, he was the guy. And this is what happened. I went in, and an assistant, I found out they had a baseball team. As a softball team. I said, well, I'm going to go out for the softball team. So I go out for the softball team. Didn't realize Gary's on the softball. This is what he does. Gary loves sports. I would find out later he believed that people worked the way they played. And so it was a way for him. He would evaluate you on the baseball diamond or on the basketball court. That was, he loved basketball probably more than baseball from what I could tell. And I went out. I remember, I think I might have hit a home run or something because I got in the game. And everybody, it was Ron Howard, Henry Winkler, the cast, everybody played. So it was like, oh, this is everybody. So where else is the assistant, the second writer's assistant going to meet all these folks and hang out with them? This was it. And I went, I remember I got in the game, I hit a home run. That Monday morning, Gary comes up to my desk when he was coming in to talk to writers and asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to be a writer. And he said, okay. And then he proceeded to tell me what Happy Days was going to be doing that season and gave me carte blanche. Says, you can come and pitch to me anytime you have an idea for Happy Days, for an episode, And this is where and for like the next 2 years, I was pitching to Gary and couldn't sell him nothing. Because at the time the show's already in syndication, so they've done everything, right? And so every time I pitch an idea, I would always come up with 3 ideas written out, outline form, and I pitch them to him, and he would just tell me, "Oh, we can't did that, we did that, we can't do this." And I said, gotta figure this out. And there's finally one time I come in and I, pitch two ideas, and he says, "Okay, any more?" I said, "No, that's all I got." And he says, "Okay, well, better luck next time," because he turned down those 2. And I'm walking out. I said, "Gary, I had this one thought, but I can't figure it out." I said, by this time, the kids are like, Fonzie's a teacher at the school, right? So I said, Fonzie teaches something he's not supposed to teach in school. I just can't figure it out. And Gary goes, "Fonzie teaches a sex education class." I said, "Oh, wow, that's great." He says, "Okay, you got your first script, kid."
Wow.
So go
Yeah.
do the outline and get it to the Lowell Gans was the head EP head writer. Get it to him upstairs. You got it. And I walk out the office happy. I had a third outline in my little case. The title was Fonzie Teaches a Sex Education Class. So what did it take me 2 years to learn? How did I tell it? I learned it had to be Gary's idea.
Yeah.
So if you want to sell something, get the buyer vested, then they take ownership. And then 9 times out of 10, you will be successful in this town. I can tell you that, because then I use that formula from then on to sell anything. I always leave a little bit out for you to jump in on. And it's not like I hadn't thought about it.
That makes me think a little bit about like the balance between you being a creative person and you also being a business person. And I feel like it's easy to not be one of those to your own detriment, right? Especially I mean, it's called the entertainment industry, right? So I wonder if you have any. Well, first of all, let me back all the way up because this is just a selfish question for me to ask. You have written so many for different types of shows with very different types of characters. I always wonder how you can write other people's voices. So, how do you write for Happy Days? And get the voicing right and know what the characters should say and do and all that. And then, later in life, do Moesha and, Sinbad show. These are very different people. How are you inhabiting all these characters?
As a staff writer, your job is to help whoever's running that show. So I listen a lot. I always tell people, new writers, when you come into the room, don't come in talking. Listen maybe for like the first week. Don't say nothing. Just understand how it's going. And then see, once you understand the characters, you understand the storytelling style, then you can jump in. You can't have 2 more opposites. I went from Happy Days to Married with Children. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
It's 2 different things, but the core is the same though, which is the other thing, which is love. It's you still love the family you have, regardless of which one it is. You could have Married with Children family, or you can have the Cunninghams, right? But at the core of it, I think one line I did write on Married with Children was when Peggy said to Al, "You really hate the fact that you love me, don't you?" He said, "Yeah, I do."
Wow. Yeah.
But you have to listen to the characters and then infuse it at the point with your own. For me, I work from my own experience. If I can infuse it with what part of me relates to Al Bundy, move on to Moesha. People say, I've been asked this question. Well, how you write for a girl? I said, I can't write for a girl. I said, I wrote Moesha as if she were a teenage boy. I just gave her the same aggression. I gave her that same confidence. which at the time was lacking in a lot of female characters, especially young Black women characters, where she had the bravado and the confidence and the I'm gonna do what I need to do type of attitude, and that was at the core of that character. So that's
That's how you can write for almost anybody.
yeah.
I heard this story once. You'll know whether it's true or not. I could be, terribly misinformed, but a story that I heard was that for Blazing Saddles, the movie, Richard Pryor wrote the white character and Mel Brooks wrote the Black character in that movie. They switched. Yeah. And I think this might even be in Mel Brooks's book. But anyways, they switched. So one wrote for the other one, right? They wrote Out of Race and Out of Style. Are you writing one character at a time? You're responsible for the whole encore? Ted Bundy and the kids and the mom, everybody.
Well, when I look in the shows I do now, I'm responsible for the overall thing. Okay,
everybody.
The direction where we're going to go into. But at the same time, half our comedy TV is done with a writing staff. And so a lot of our time is spent exploring these characters. And certain individuals on the writing staff represent sometimes one for one maybe what this character is. So for me as a showrunner, I have to listen to these people and incorporate it in terms of my overall goal for the show and for the characters and for the story. So that's kind of how it goes. Back when I was younger, I was that to the whoever the showrunner was. Okay, all right, this young Black guy, no, well, he knows what's happening because he's living it, and it was true. Now I'm living fundamentally a different experience, and I'm having to listen to the young 22, 23-year-old boy or girl, and in terms of their experience, and then I incorporate it into the overall goal of the project.
I found like over time as I get older that if you're not being mentored in two directions, with younger people, and you getting your own mentorship at the same time, you're not doing it right.
Exactly. You just hit, exactly. Yeah. I think I'm mentored as much. A lot of times they just like hold my hand. No, Ralph, this is. I go. Okay. I get. But I'm big enough in terms of I don't. Certain things are just good storytelling, but key to that is infusing any character with and this term, I really hate the term authentic, but with an authentic point of view. So, and to me, I will have a character do anything if anybody can indicate to me that it's been done. It's been their experience. I try to operate from experiences, and I always challenge my writers. We'll hit a roadblock and say, "Okay, has this ever happened to you?" And sure enough, everyone, almost everyone said, "Yeah, it's happened to me." So what happened? But we'll go around the room, and then we'll pick the most interesting thing that happened to somebody. You never know. Moesha, probably the weird thing about Moesha was one of the most controversial episodes we had was when Moesha turned down the new car, the new Saturn from her father. We got so much mail. I can't believe how stuck up this girl was. And so to me, it's all right for a Black girl to be entitled, because God knows enough of the other folks are feeling entitled. I wanted to show that, but also show that she was willing to go beyond merely being entitled. She was willing to work for it. In other words, by the end of it, she was willing to work, say, okay, I don't want this car. You want me to have this car. I know you think I'm ungrateful, but that's not it. It's just, I want what I want. So instead of you giving it to me, I'm going to work for it. That was the message of the piece, and that's what she did. I wanted but I wanted the entitlement. So, but that particular device came out of one of my writers. I believe it was Felicia Henderson, who's big time EP right now. And she said, "Oh, yeah, if my dad tried to give me some card, I wouldn't take it." I said, "Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect, you little brat." So that came out, and there was, and who knew that everybody would get so upset? Black folks like, "I dare her to hey, she didn't want a Saturn."
But you know what? This is what's interesting too, is that you have never, and it sounds like I can't speak for you, but uh, have explicitly just made it about race and things. You've been very, I think, kind of universal in the way that you have applied your talent. You could go anywhere with it. Looking at your portfolio of things, you have to be a pretty, I think, expansive thinking person to be able to do all these different pieces of work you did. But I will say this much: in my lifetime as a parent, looking at my youngest and my oldest, what's available to them to consume has changed a lot, right? So when I look at my oldest, you could flip through a lot of movies. You could go through a lot of movie sections and never come across a Black family. And if you did come across a Black family, it wasn't one that was representative of all of ourselves. I mean, we have middle-class people, we have upper-class people. I mean, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was, showing us something a little bit differently, that, it wasn't the struggle, the good times, right?
Everybody on that struggle bus.
The struggle bus.
Well, it's not that we don't struggle. It's not lost on us doing the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, that, we reboot almost 20 years later, and there still hadn't been another animated family sitcom. It just really has not at the level which we were doing, right? And when we first came on board, there hadn't been one. Then 20 years later, that's why we were able to bring it back. It's still, there's that void, if you will. It's a tremendous void. Even in this, look, things are a lot different now. There are a lot of shows. We're not stuck just watching one show or just three networks or anything like that. There's a ton of things out there that you can access, and interesting work being done by Black creatives, whether here or in Great Britain. I'm so jealous of them. They make me mad, those Black Brits. They make me mad because they come over and take our jobs, and then they start doing even great shows like Supercell, which I just saw, which is like I love. With all this opportunity, it's still a lot of work to do.
It's very dry still. I mean, thinking as a family person, my youngest is a daughter, so it's my only daughter. She's the youngest. You flip through Netflix, or you flip through, we have a million different streaming services now. So it's, the opportunity is there. But when you are you're raising a girl who is not white, and you're looking for characters that solve problems, that are smart, that are the lead character, whatever. So this is what you're flipping through, looking for as a dad, right? You're going through a lot before you land on one.
Yeah, I look right now, certainly in the animated world, all you got Proud Family, you got Moon Girl. Okay. I don't know what else you got. I'm sure there might be something else out there, but that's the only thing happening on a major level. Other than that, you don't. We promote the fact, and this is the nature of the business in general. It's not even just a Black thing. Moesha was a primetime TV show, and and as it turns out, it was at a heyday period, which nobody realized at the time. The older folks did, we did, but the younger folks didn't get that this was unusual. But whether it's One-on-One or the one with the twins, all those shows where you had Black girl leads in primetime TV shows had been relegated years afterwards to Nickelodeon, Disney Channel. When I was coming up, I wouldn't have a career if I couldn't put Moesha on a network, a broadcast network. Moesha was developed by CBS, picked up by UPenn. Okay. But there's nothing now. There is absolutely nothing. That whole category, whether it's black, white, or otherwise, has disappeared.
At a time we're the most diverse, though. I mean, at a time when we're the most diverse and our families are the most diverse ever.
Yeah, but in movies, remember movies? We used to go, kids used to go to movies because they did movies about them.
Mm-hmm.
What name of the movie?
Well, I remember as a young person growing up in the 70s, there was this whole category of black movies that were just for us. They were, for us, by us, black movies. There was even a black version of The Exorcist, if I remember right. There was this girl called Abby.
Yeah. See, I'm going to bring down two different characters, the bias for us, look, Tyler Perry is doing a great job doing stuff for us. He's kind of the only one. It doesn't exist. For young people, just that category, young people, black, white, or otherwise, they don't even do those movies anymore. They don't really do those TV shows
anymore. Right. It's getting more ensemble, I think, too. You have black and brown and,
Yeah, right. We'll be in there. We'll be like the fifth lead.
Yeah. So this is why we need you, though. This is like, this is why we need you, because the Proud family, I mean, listen, I hate to keep bemoaning the same thing, but this is what my life looked like. So with the oldest, you cling on to Barney, because Barney is a neutral character, right? Barney's a neutral character. So we had Barney everything. We had, all kinds of Barney. With the daughter, there was a point in time where it was Doc McStuffins. You had your house full of Doc McStuffins stuff, because that's your one show. You've got a doctor.
That was it.
And by the way, I would just want for people listening or watching, I got a chance to meet the actual black daughter or black doctor who that is made after. She grew up in Watts and she went through magnet school in Watts. Her dad died when she was 13 and she became a doctor still. And her kids are off the charts. Her education decisions she made for her 3 kids, they are excelling in crazy ways. That's where the story came from. And we need more stories just like that, right? But I bought all the Doc McStuffin stuff. We had a whole room.
It's there for the taking if someone wants to come in on it. And that's, that's one of my focuses, myself and Bruce Smith, who's my partner. We have our deal at Disney, Bar Productions, and we really are leaning into that. And we hopefully one day soon there'll be some additional stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people listening to Bruce is responsible for Bebe's kids, which is like one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Oh, come on.
Guilty pleasure.
Robin Harris is brilliant.
Yes, very brilliant. Well, listen, I have 2 quick questions. I wanted to ask these early, but the first one is just how much of what you attribute to being your talent is innate. Like you're a creative person. Your brother's a creative person. Your son's a creative person. So obviously it runs in the family. You might just be gifted. And how much of it is just hard work? You had to apply and learn how to do everything that you do. It's not just innate. You're not just a prodigy. Well, nature and nurture. What is your balance?
Well, I'm definitely not a prodigy. I didn't get going till I was past 30. I think I put in the hard work in terms of being dedicated to educating myself on the job, paying attention, always being present, always, volunteer for whatever. You know what I mean? It was, it's about that, because no school teaches you how to do what we do. It's not possible. It's OJT, you have to learn by doing. And I've been very fortunate to be in situations where I had the time. I was in a situation long enough to learn. Being on Happy Days, starting as an assistant and working all those years afforded me a view and an opportunity to learn. And then, Married with Children is a successful show. So I had an opportunity to learn. So it's about the hard work for me. I'm not, my brother, let me contrast this. My brother picked up drumsticks when he was 8 years old and could play right away. He's a prodigy. Me, I picked up a pen and it took me until I was like about 19 to even learn how to scribble, so I'm not.
Yeah, but when you took off and kept going. So last question, final question on all of this, because this show is about learning. It's about it's about lifelong learning, concerning us all learners. And I just wonder, everything that we talked about, how it informed your parenting, how it informed your philosophy as a dad. Did you have a philosophy as a dad? And how did all of this inform the way your next generation was taught?
Look, I've just always been taught, get an education. I'm no more forward thinking than that, even as a parent. But I think one of the things I wanted to do with my children was to listen to what they wanted to do, as opposed to, I think I come from a generation where parents told you, this is what you're going to do. And so we all kind of rebelled against that. We would not do that, even if it was the best thing in the world for us. I was more of a, hey, what do you want to do? My son is a rapper, a musician, and at a certain point when he was very young, I said to him, I said, well, what do you want to do? You want to rap? He said, yeah. So I got my brother to do, he put together a group, got my brother to produce a song on him. My wife, who's a production designer, built some sets. We put up a green screen in our backyard. We shot a video. I mean, but that was, and it turned out to be a pivotal moment in his life and his two friends. It was kind of interesting. Who years later came to me and said, this made the biggest difference in my life. They didn't become famous rappers or anything like that. It just allowed them to realize that you could do. We just said, okay, let's do it. And we did it. I just wanted to support whatever he wanted to do, and we took that approach with both our sons. Whatever you want to do is fine. We'll help you. But we started with them.
That is such an amazing philosophy, though. Yeah.
Anybody's got boys. Just in general, compared to girls, boys are idiots. Okay, so I'm not. I'm not saying anything people don't know already. And I remember one son said, "Well, I don't want to go to school." So we filled out the applications, packed his bag. You're going to school. I mean, we did that, but but as much as we could, we would listen to him.
It sounds like you made sure that he had the tools around him to be creative, to try things.
People talk about education. Education just gives you the confidence, the way to think about learning. I'm not doing, I got 21 and a half hours of integral and differential calculus. I did real well in that. I don't use any of that. But,
wow.
But coming out of college gave me the confidence. Okay, I can hold my own, whatever. I can read, I can learn, I can study, I can, make things happen. So education gives you that confidence. It also gives you a chance to take a breather, to discover who you are. And I think everybody should be, this race we're in as adults is long enough. You don't have to really get into it early. Enjoy yourself for a little bit, and before you rest up, before you get into this marathon we're running.
I really appreciate you being on today. This has been very enlightening for me, and I was super excited. Like I said to you, I think previously, you had me at Crush Groove when I looked at the list of things. That is, I get Happy Days. I understand Moesha. I understand all these other things, but Crush Groove is a hip hop icon movie. So,
yeah. Well, the fact, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you stories forever. But the Fat Boys, the Fat Boys used to get on me. Well, wrote the script and said, "We don't say this." I'm going, oh man, All right, guys. So I went back, I rewrite the dialogue, but I went back. They got on me so bad, I got mad at them. So then I rewrote every scene, and you might notice in the movie, the fat boys run into every scene. And that was my way of getting back out. So
Making them run.
so they were doing shoot one scene, they running in, and they like exhausted. And Michael Shaw says, Ralph, do they have to run into the scene? I said,
Yes.
Michael, they absolutely have to run into the scene. And then I looked at him. I said, okay.
So don't mess with the writer. Do not mess with the writer. Well, Ralph, thank you so much, sir. Come back anytime when you want to have a further discussion. I'm so excited about the work that you do. And I'm very excited to share it with other people so that they can unlock in themselves the idea that it's possible, the idea that you can do more than what your high school counselor tells you to do. If your counselor tells you, you're not West Point material, you're not college material,
or any material,
any material, like, well, look at us now. So that's what I want people to take away from all of this. I did hear a couple of things too that you said. The resilience in the face of people doubting you and telling you that there's things you can't do. You had resilience to go past that. Exposure. When you got to California, you were exposed to creative people who were doing a lot of different things, and you were able to, in your own mind, put it together that this is possible. There's a hustle to be had here that I can do. And then relationships. You talked about relationships being so important. And, you threw some names out there that kind of threw me for a loop, like the Gary Marshall. You said Gary. Well, the actual Gary Marshall, but you mentioned several other people in there that, like your main mentor and Carl and others. They all added something. Like relationships was key. It sounds like to your success.
Oh, Michael Moy. Do you know who Michael Moy is?
I do not. No. Who's
well,
that?
he co-created Married with Children, and
oh wow,
and he's a black man, and nobody, very few people even understand that. And Michael was instrumental in sponsoring me. It's the part I didn't mention is you got to be lucky too. And
well, the more you're in the room, the luckier you get, right? The more you're in the room, you get a lot luckier,
Yeah, and however you got to get in that room, if you're the guy bringing in the coffee, so what? That certainly was me. And then it went from there, and it's and I feel very blessed, but luck is an important part of it, and I think that's something I've always been. Not in Vegas, but just
right. Well, the house is against you in Vegas, but luck, hard work, and talent, I think, is the cocktail. And you're very humble about all this, Ralph. But your body of work is like jealousy inducing. It's like it's instructive for people, for a creative, what a good life looks like. It's such a body of work that is jealousy inducing. So, and you're so humble about it.
Well, you know what? It's I don't want to poo-poo it or anything, but I just feel very fortunate. I recognize on a daily basis how much fun and my life is in terms of the career I have, and it is what it is, and it's I'm grateful, and the thing you have to take away from it, anybody could do it if you just get the right mindset and believe in yourself. I don't know if you've spoken to my partner, Bruce Smith. His story is absolutely.
I would love to speak with Bruce Smith.
Inspiring. Well, you should come. I know Bruce would talk with you because, in the world of artist animation, okay, he's the dude. And his story, he comes like all of us. Like most of us, I should say, he comes from humble beginnings. So I think people would relate to his story in a major, major way.
Humble beginnings, and then you find him on the BET red carpet at some point, right? So,
It's, yeah,
so yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. But that's not the goal. That's not the goal. The goal is to really, and I'll leave you with this thought. We really, myself, Bruce, and most of the people I mentioned, name dropped on this, really get into it for the right reason. They want to make a difference. They want to provide images that they first want to see and that they want the kids to see and they want your kids to see. So that's my main driver. When you look at Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, it's a range of hues and tones and attitudes representing Black folks that is unlike anything else, quite frankly, is on TV. That's what we do.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's needed. It's needed. And as a parent, I appreciate it. So, everybody, this has been another episode of Always Learning, and we are always learning. And that's what the show is about, is figuring out what people learned to help them be successful in a personally meaningful life, like what you really want to do. We thank you very much, sir, and
Thank
come back
you.
anytime that you have something that you would like to talk about. And we will catch everyone on the next episode of Always Learning.